Hey, so what we're going to do today is we are going to try to um, create a custom foam roller. This is the old one for the printer that goes into um, the horoscope machine you can see back there. The printer was an old Victor adding machine company printer, a new 7-pin dot matrix printer. Since that foam has got to go onto this roller, we are going to use a piece of, we're going to use a bit, a Forstner bit that is just undersized. It's a little bit smaller than it, so that the foam replacement roller, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second, will have something to grip on. If it's too big, it'll just spin and it will be useful. And I want to try to not have to use any adhesive on this dowel when we put it back in. So I've done a couple things. I have coated all the surfaces of the drill press with WD-40 along with that Forstner bit and my my drilling clamp. I've also got a, I don't know if you can see it here, this is a 1/8 inch 6-inch drill bit. I'm going to use that as the pilot hole because the foam that I've prepped, not this one but another one, is actually a solid core foam. It's a little bit bigger, but I've got to go about 4 inches through it, and the Forstner bit can only come down here, so I'm actually going to have to raise up the table. If I start this with a pilot hole and it goes through the center of both the top and the bottom that I've already marked on the piece, then I'll know that I'm in the center. And again, if you take a look at this one, even the original one wasn't exactly, it looks like it's a little eccentric. It's a little bigger on one side than the other. So at the end of the day, it's not that big a deal. So the question is how am I going to do this? It's not easy to drill through foam because the drill bit will grab it and it'll start twisting it and tearing it. So the foam that I'm using is a brand new piece of upholstery foam that I got from Foam Mart here in Los Angeles. They're in Burbank and Studio City. It's the closest size that I could get, which is I believe it's a 3-inch, and this foam is just a little bit smaller. The actual roller needs to be just a little bit smaller, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. So how are we going to drill through foam that will bind up when you put a drill bit on it? Well, the concept was that I would freeze the foam. I would use something that could inhibit the movement of the foam, but then could be easily removed. And the most logical thing for me was water, and that's why everything over here is prepped in WD-40, so I keep the rust to a minimum. So I've got to work quickly. It's about 72 degrees out here in Los Angeles today. I've already frozen both the foam, I've frozen the foam itself in a shipping tube that is exactly the same size, 3 inches. So it's got a paper outer core. I've got it sitting in an old piece of Tupperware that I don't mind messing up. Even if I do drill through it, it's not that big of a deal. So I've got the foam in there. I believe I've got it level. I've already got it pre-marked off with a top and a bottom marking hole. And I'm going to drill through it while it's frozen. Use this pilot to get through the center to make sure I'm centered, and then again I will use the Forstner bit, and I will have to go up and down raise the platform on the drill press as I go. And the problem with that is when it's locked in place, not a big deal, but to allow the travel of the thing, you have to actually let it go, and then it allows it to rock a little bit more. So that's not a big deal because I'll be using a tray like this underneath along with the Tupperware. So once I get the pilot hole started, then I'll have a starting point. So that's the plan. Now let's see if we can actually execute it. Okay, I've just taken the core out of the freezer. You can see a lot of the water dripped out. It's kind of hard to keep water in a column in place, but it's good enough. There's still enough water in there to hold things in. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get the platform to a height where I know I can get at least a decent center point on this. And I'm going to have to hold it manually, but I'm going to try that. And let's see here. I really don't know how this is going to work, or if it's going to work, but we'll give it a try. I'm also going to bring the heat gun over. I have a couple different things to control the temperature. I have a heat gun if I need to warm it up, which I might. And I've got my electrical equipment off of the ground. I've got the cords you can kind of see behind me strung up, so it's not going to, in case there's like massive water loss. It's not going to cause any problems. And then for the freezing part of it, I actually have canned air. When you put canned air upside down, it actually can freeze stuff. So I can flash freeze a section of it if I need to. So here we go. Let's give it a try. It's going pretty well. Yeah, it's like going to butter. This is only going to go down. It's only going to go down so far. I'm going to go ahead and knock this off. I've got the plastic lid in here, so I have no idea where it is on that. I did it to hold the water in, and it didn't work very well, so I'll turn it off so you can hear me really quickly. Let me get a knife. Try not to cut myself. Yeah, so I didn't anticipate that the plastic cap would actually be a problem. I was hoping it would hold the water in, but it's actually causing a problem. So let's carefully cut through this, keep my hand out of the way so there's no danger. Apologize, I'll try and stay in frame here. But again, I'm working against it. It's frozen pretty solid, so it's not going to get too wet, or it's not going to thaw out too quickly. I suppose I could hit it with that heat gun. Yeah, that may be what I need to do. Oh, no, it's coming loose. Good. All right, so there's the bottom of it. I can just see the center mark. So that's a good thing. I'm going to put this in here. And it's a little off center, so let's start it up. Now there's no way to know if I actually made it to the center or not. So now what I need to do is it's not really melted yet, so I don't need this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn that off. Take the tray or the cabinet up, or the tray up or down a little bit so I can get in this hole again. And now we're going to go up into it. Once we get lined up, we should be fine. Good, so we want to go up at least to here so we can go all the way through it. And we'll see how close we get to the actual bottom. See how straight it is. So let's do that. We're through. I think we went all the way through on that one. So let's go ahead and back down. And notice it's really nice. The foam doesn't deflect at all. Yeah, I think we made it right through the same center. So we're good. Okay, so now the next phase is to use the Forstner bit. And this is going to take a little more pressure. So I don't need to use this 1/8" bit anymore. Let me hit it with some WD-40 again so it doesn't rust. So that should be good. And the Forstner bit is considerably larger. It's a 1/4" shank. And I want to try and get as much as I can extended from that hole so that I can go down as far as possible. And again, even with that depth, the deepest I can go, and it looks like it's just underneath that. So if I bottom out where I'm hitting the top of that with this, that's when I'll go back to this side and center it on that. So let's try the good side first. Let's get this up much closer to where we need to be so we can make full use of the travel. And then we'll lock it down, at least for the first part of this. Get the knife out of the way because I don't think we need that anymore. Hold on tightly. So it's taking out both foam and ice. Bunch up a little bit, not too much. I bottomed out for as far as the table itself can go. So let's get this foam and ice off of here. And again, I coated my table with WD-40, so hopefully it shouldn't affect it too much. And it's not too bad. Again, nice clean sides. The foam didn't bind, and you can really see the solid ice there at the bottom. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to press my luck. It looks like we got about more than halfway through. I'm going to try it from this side and see if we center up. It's a little off center. Actually, we got a little bit of schmutz here. Let's blow that off with air. Yeah, it's a little misbalanced, so I'm going to try and compensate for that by holding it down a little bit. And I can actually go up a little bit higher with this. So it's almost to that point. Yeah, that's much better. Will I be able to clear? No, let's go down just a little bit. Just do it. All right, let's get that centered. And we're good. The water isn't, other than what I've chipped off, the water isn't doing anything in the core at all. So let's see. Let's turn this on. It's like a snow machine. And I think we're through. That was it. So let's take a look. Looks like there's a little piece of foam in the center. We'll save that as a souvenir, but looks like we got through almost perfectly. So what we did was we used ice to suspend foam in a container so that the foam wouldn't bunch up. And then we used a Forstner bit. It's a little off. I mean, no, it joins it pretty well. What I'm seeing there is the water became solid up to about the halfway point, and the rest of it is what I knocked off. But it looks pretty good. I think that's going to be good. It looks nice and centered on this foam piece, pretty well centered on this. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to try to do a time lapse of this melting. So what we have here is the finished core. Again, it looks great. We drilled through it. It isn't even really starting to melt yet, which is nice. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to accelerate the bottom half of it using a heat gun, and I'll do that on a time lapse. So as you can see, the heat gun was way too hot, and it's really not having much of an effect against us. The bottom half is nice and squishy, but then I thought to myself, this is already wet. Why am I making this so difficult? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this inside and run some hot water through it. The heat gun is too much. I caramelized a little bit of the foam on the top, but that's okay. I have a little bit of extra that I can take off the ends if I need to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I'm going to run some hot water through this. It should be thawed out in just a couple of seconds. So I'll come back when I'm done. So here I am at my workbench, and here's the finished foam roller. It's mostly dry. It's still a little damp, but man, it came out great. The only thing was I cooked it a little bit with that with the hot air gun, but again, I'm going to trim off the edges just a little bit anyway. So looks pretty good. It should fit. I'm not going to put it on the roller just yet. I need to see how well it holds once it's dry, because foam tends to be a little bit less pliable when it doesn't have any water in it. So I'm going to leave this out for a couple days before I put it on the finished roller. I think that's it. Let me show you for comparison. So here's the original foam roller. Again, it's a little bit smaller, but that's okay. This fit in almost perfectly. In fact, it's very easy for it to spin within it. Within this new one, it's got a little more to grip on, so I think it's going to be perfect. You can see I've got a little bit of extra height there. So mission accomplished, and that's how you can drill out a piece of something unstable like foam. You can suspend it in ice and then do whatever you want to with it. Of course, you have a limited working time, but it's a way to get objects you don't normally have. If I needed to, if I found out that this diameter was what was needed, you can see it's a little bit smaller. I could refreeze this whole thing. I would put something in the core like this. I wouldn't put this because the wood would swell up. But I'd put some sort of a plastic 3D printed core in it, freeze it all together, and I could put this on the lathe and actually take, you know, whatever that is, 1/8 of an inch or so off of each side. But I think this diameter is probably closer to what the original intent was, because the shroud that's over this, this is a paper ejector foam. The shroud that's over this seems to fit a 3-inch more than like a 2 3/4 inch, which is what this is. So thanks for sticking with me on this. It was fun.